All right, so the March 2026 Duelist Cup is coming up, and in fact, it's probably going to be live in a few hours after this video gets uploaded because of how long I've procrastinated doing this. And we just got a new selection pack with a bunch of new decks. So, let's do a tier list on what are going to be the best decks and I guess the not so best decks for the upcoming Duelist Cup. So first, the newest deck that everyone's hyped about is Radiant Typhoon. And there's a lot to say about this deck. Like, first, let's go over the positives. Radiant Typhoon is a very good deck going second. It is one of the few decks I trust going second that doesn't run a ton of hand traps. Because Radiant Typhoon does, most Radiant Typhoon builds typically do not run many hand traps at all. In fact, some of them don't even run Ash Blossom, if you can believe it. Because its engine is just very proficient in playing the boards. The quick play spells it plays are, they're board breakers already, stuff like Droplets and Book of Eclipse and Super Poly. But beyond that, Mystical Space Typhoon, unironically, is just a very good card going second. Because every deck in this format, at least all of the top projected, high tier decks this format, have some important spell and trap card that they set in their back row that MST can just snipe and hit and get rid of it. Stuff like obviously we obviously there are Dragotail traps. Dragotail has like 3 traps that they set, so having MST being able to just snipe out the Dragotail traps is excellent, or even being able to dodge the flame is also something that you can do with MST. Yummy, depending on the variant, Yummy at least always sets surprise, and if they're playing the Mitsurugi version, or like just any Mitsurugi decks, Mitsurugi decks also play Purification, which you can snipe with MST. Vanguard Canines plays like 6 or 7 traps in their entire main deck, and somehow they always set 3 of them. They always have 3 of them on the field, so like you can hit the field spell so that you can, destroy your Vanguard Canine your opponent's Vanguard monster. You can hit there's Snow Devils that your field doesn't get nuked as easily. So there's just a lot of stuff you can hit with MST. Like MST, if you're playing against any competent deck, MST will always get you value going second. So like that's straight up. And the fact that it's not a once per turn, and the fact that you can just search multiple MST during the course of doing your combo, like you're actually like just the MST by itself applies so much pressure. Then you have cards like Sheena itself, where Sheena it's like a full board wipe, board clear for either monsters or back row. It allows you to control a single wind monster, which is like that's very hard, right? The wind deck being able to control a wind monster. So yeah, this deck is like actually just feels really good going second. It's what feels like one of the better decks going second as well. And yeah, now some not so good things about this deck is that this deck low-key is kind of bricky and inconsistent. It doesn't have the most starters at all. It has like a Vanguard Canine problem in its consistency, except it somehow feels even worse because in terms of 1-card starters, I mean, the deck really does not have many 1-card starters at all. It has like the Swen and Eldum and Chant, and then I guess the cards to search Eldum and Swen, stuff like Shield Bearer, which if you're even playing that, like that's it for like 1-card combos. Crusea itself is not a 1-card combo. It only works if you draw off another card, and Crusea is a massive choke point whereas if it gets stopped, sometimes you will just pass turn. Megala is also not a 1-card combo. It requires you to have multiple card combos, and it can get stopped by a single hand trap as well. It's yeah, and like oftentimes you will draw 1 play but because your deck doesn't have that many starters, you won't have a 2nd play, so you can get stopped by 1 hand trap fairly often. Like high key, it feels almost better going second as a deck going second as a deck going first. Because going first, it's like it feels low key kind of fragile, being only having 5 cards to start with, and then not to mention that when you're going second, like your quick play spells have much more value going second than they do going first. Like MST has way more utility going second than it does going first, because going first it doesn't do anything. Like it's straight up, it only works as if you're able to do your combo, but it doesn't like hit anything important. Like you can't use it to pop your own stuff, and like I mean you do use it to pop your own stuff as part of your combos, but it doesn't help you necessarily play like through interruption or hand traps going first. Like Droplet can't be used to dodge stuff that they would use to hit your Crusea with when you're going first. Stuff like that. Super Volley can randomly be used to dodge stuff, but obviously not really as relevant going first. So like they're and like it's going first end board. It doesn't feel too entirely strong either because I mean it's MST negates, but the negates can be chain blocked with the trap, and like the setup doesn't feel super super oppressive or anything as compared to some other decks we will cover in this list. And yeah, so like it's hard to say. Sometimes this deck feels like the best deck in the world, and sometimes it feels like really mediocre, and it does have a wide variance of possible hands, which is the inconsistency there. So I will put it as a tier 2 deck for now, mainly because I haven't seen a build I really like with this deck. Perhaps like within the next week, if somebody comes up with a build that actually addresses the consistency problems and actually feels good and doesn't like have all of the issues I've mentioned before, or like has less of the issues that I've mentioned right now, then yeah, maybe I could see it bumping up to tier 1. But it is at least a high tier 2 deck, maybe among the best tier 2 decks at the very minimum. So we'll put it here for now. And considering like again, if this deck is like less solved compared to the other decks, so if this gets more solved and you find a better build, then I could easily see this moving up a tier as well. Now we gotta talk about the other decks in this pack. And oh boy. So why don't we start with the best one out of all of these? Doom Z. So yeah, Doom Z. I'm sure a lot of you saw that DK video hyping up Doom Z about, and like the very first card that DK plays is not even in this game yet because we're missing the second wave of support, or whatever wave of support Doom Z has. We're missing it, and two very important cards we're missing. One of them is like Zelgredo or whatever it is, like that pendulum scale that's like super insane because it pops a card, and then it also, when it's added to your extra, it searches a card, and it also cheats out your Jupiter Power Patron onto the field, very easy. So you have an easy way to cheat out your strongest boss monster. Like obviously without that, missing that's a huge problem. And also we don't have the rank 5 Xyz. The rank 5 Xyz is like just something you just slap on to any Xyz. It's like the DDD Machinex for Doom Z, where you can just slap it on any Doom Z Xyz, and then it searches a card and it pops a card. So missing those are like low-key 2 of the best cards in the deck, and we're missing both of those. So without those, the deck is like super fragile. It is super fragile. It is loses to one hand trap like its job. Also, you're playing like the Medius cards. You're playing the Archmage cards because you have to play like Medius as your normal summon, because like that's like your best starter. But obviously that's a huge choke point in the deck as well. Like I just look, man, this deck will be better in the future, much better in the future. So don't feel bad about pulling Doom Z cards. So like if you're pulling this pack for Radiant Typhoon cards and you pull a bunch of Doom Z cards, don't feel bad. Like these cards will still have use in the future. Just as of right now, it's not that great of a deck. It's kind of like a little bit worse than mid, to be honest. But still better than the next deck in the pack, which is Assault Mode. You literally cannot spell this. You cannot spell Assault Mode without ass. And goddamn, did they ever try to make this deck playable? Because a couple of the support cards, if they were literally in any other deck, they would be the most broken cards ever imaginable. But because they're in Assault Mode, I'm not even sure if it makes the deck even playable. Because like you have Nightwing Cleric, which is a level 8 Sinker, which is both an E-Telly for any Assault Mode monster, plus a Searcher for Assault Mode Activate, and it lets you use Assault Mode Activate the turn you set it, despite it being a trap card. And there's a field spell that literally lets you cheat out the entire your like summoning conditions of Assault Mode. It lets you bypass the entire point of Assault Mode in the first place, which is that you have to summon out your boss monster on the field and then tribute it for Assault Mode Activate. But no, the field spell literally just lets you use the monster in your extra deck as a fodder for the summon. So like basically, if you want to try to summon Assault Mode Stardust, normally you would have to summon Stardust normally and then tribute the Stardust with Assault Mode Activate. Instead, you just literally banish the Assault. You just like fucking banish the Stardust from your extra deck to summon the Assault Mode Stardust, and then there you have it. You have an Omni Gate. Like these are insane cards. Like for any other deck, like it would be crazy. But for Assault mode, it doesn't fix the fundamental problem of the assault mode deck, which is that you're still having to run all of these fucking Garnets and all of these fucking assault mode activates. In fact, you have to run multiple assault mode activates. That, you know how insulting that is that how every deck just has a free one of searchable trap card that they can search whenever and just add like a free negate onto your end board. Assault mode has to run 2 of its bricky traps for the combo to work, and then every single boss monster it has is also a brick, because if you hard draw, the Assault mode activate can't summon from deck still because it's a fucking old ass card. So like drawing Assault mode Stardust is a brick, and like you're doing all of that just to end on a board with like less negates than a Mitsurugi Yummy deck that does the entire combo with like less cards and has more negates on its end board. So like this is like, I don't like, dog, this is it's I mean, it made the support made the deck less ass. I will say the deck is has a semblance of a plan now. It can actually some of the time actually accomplish something, as opposed to accomplishing nothing 100% of the time before. That doesn't make it anywhere near playable, near like good enough to be playable. But yeah, it's still, at least it can do something, which is arguably that could be more that can be said than can be said for the next deck in a pack, which is Goki. I don't even like. Does anybody know what Goki does in 2026? Because I tried to look up Goki decks online. Okay, there's no info on this in either the TCG or OCG. Not a goddamn TCG, not a goddamn single OCG or TCG player has ever played Goki in any semi-competitive event. I don't even know what the deck fucking does, because like I'm reading the cards, like it has the new Suprex, which is basically a Jokol for a K9 Jokol for the archetype. Like that seems good, but then I see a line of text where it says it locks you into Goki monsters. And at that point, I'm like, what? So okay, so if it locks you into Goki monsters, what can you do with Goki monsters? It's like you make a huge towers, except it's not even big. The towers is pretty small. It's small compared to Liger Dancer, and unlike Liger Dancer, it doesn't blow up the field. So like I don't know why we're making worse towers decks that came out after Luna Knight support. But yeah, and also the fusion, which when it's fusion summoned, it nukes the board, but it's not a quick effect. It's only on when it's fusion summoned. And as far as I'm reading the Goki cards, there's no way to fusion summon the Goki Thunder Ogre fusion monster on your opponent's turn. So like, how do you can't even board wipe your opponent's? I don't like. Any Goki experts want to tell me what the hell this deck does? Like, low-key, I feel like if this deck literally just made Verte and the Dragoon, that does about as much as the new Goki support. I'm really struggling to find out what the purpose of the Goki support is. Like, I can see the vision behind Doomsday. I can see the vision behind a Sun mode. I do not see the vision behind this Goki stuff. Like what you're trying to accomplish with this deck. I'm really sorry. Like, that being said, I'm putting all these in D level 19. Okay, you absolutely can get them D level max with any of these 3 decks I put down here. Like, would I recommend it for your own sanity and like your own well-being? No, I cannot in good conscience recommend playing these decks if your goal is to try to get to D level 20. But if you really want to, like I'm sure there are worse decks in this game. Maybe those, none of those really come to mind right now, considering I just talked about Goki. But yeah. Next, Sky Striker. So Sky Striker, low-key, is like maybe the deck that got the buff the most with this new combination of this new ban list and this new pack, like of all the existing decks, obviously. But Desires went to 3. Desires is a good card, and pretty much Sky Striker is like the best deck that actually plays Desires consistently, so it appreciates that. And also it gets a Radiant Typhoon Vision, this is probably outside of Radiant Typhoon, Striker is probably the best deck at playing Radiant Typhoon Vision, because Striker has a ton of quick play spells that are easily searchable in its own archetypes, such as Widow Anchor, Linkage, Shark Cannon, if you play that, I suppose. So yeah, it basically just got an additional 5 copies of Pot of Greed with the extra 2 Desires and the 3 Radiant Typhoon Vision, and that helps a lot, because one of the main issues with Sky Striker before was that sometimes like it wasn't the most consistent deck, even though like it felt like whenever it drew an engage, it was obviously 1 engage leads to like 5 engage activations, but a lot of times it was hard to get to the first engage. It was hard to get to the first additional draw, and like if you don't if you're not able to stack engages, if you're not able to draw through your deck, that's when you get those very very underwhelming boards with Striker, which is like zero pass or like 0 plus Widow Anchor pass as their your only disruptions, which is like obviously that is not good enough, like nowhere near good enough. But now that you have you have so many more cards that basically say draw 2, and like anytime you draw additional cards in Striker, like that's insane, because anytime you can draw additional cards, dude, that's another chance to draw additional copies of Engage. Like that's crazy. And then if you ever get Engage into rotation, then the deck feels like one of the like when you're activating multiple engages a turn, it feels like one of the best decks in the game. So just the Pot of Desires and the Striker the Radiant Typhoon Visions definitely just helps as that it gives the deck even more power and consistency. And yeah, I will say is that it's a little weird in the draw. It's not the worst in the draw. Like the thing is with Radiant Typhoon and Sky Striker is that these decks are well, Radiant Typhoon is actually not weak in the draw at all if you like played normally most of the time. It is like draw is not the the super game ending turn skipping hand trap against Radiant Typhoon that you might think it is, because all of your quick plays, all of your Radiant Typhoon cards are obviously quick plays, and you can just you can either activate it in the draw phase to completely avoid draw, or just chain them to the draw so that you still get value out of them even after getting drawn. Striker is a little more vulnerable to draw because the Striker, a lot of Striker engine cards are not quick play spells. They're normal spells like Engage. So if you get drolled, then obviously like that hurts a bit more. But you know, that's mainly for when you get drolled going second. That it sucks. Like getting drolled going second is always gonna suck as Striker or any deck that plays Striker cards. And if you're going first, getting drolled is okay because you can still you probably drew at least like a card or two most of the time, and then you can set up and then hopefully survive. And if you survive after getting drolled, then you're good. So like I think Striker is like actually a lot better now. It has decent matchups too. Like against Vanquished Canine does not really put up any spell negates. So like there's that. There's it's obviously very good against the Draco Tail traps. Like in a similar way, Radiant Typhoon is good against Draco Tail. Striker is also good against Draco Tail. Being able to dodge flames and being able to like dodge its trap cards is a big deal. And yeah, so next is Tenbai. So I've seen Tenbai. I think technically Tenbai can also use the Radiant Typhoon Vision, because you would play Striker Tenbai as a blind second deck. That the blind second Striker Tenbai deck I feel is a lot more vulnerable than the Radiant Typhoon and the Sky Striker versions, because not the normal Sky Striker without the Tenbai cards, because Striker Tenbai is a blind second deck, and as when I was talking about Droll is a much bigger issue when you're going second as opposed to going first. So these decks Radiant Typhoon and Striker can shrug off Droll if they're going first most of the time. Striker Tenbai never goes first. So if you get Drolled going second with Striker Tenbai, it's still like that. It's still just as devastating. Like the Radiant Typhoon Vision is like usually not going to help you out in that scenario. Like maybe it'll get you a couple draws if you hard draw it and have another quick play spell to discard with the Radiant Typhoon Vision. But like that's still, you're still under draw at the end of the day. And like that's the thing about mixing Radiant Typhoon cards with other draw engines, is that the Radiant Typhoon cards again are good in the draw because all the Radiant Typhoon's quick play spells, they're quick play spells, so obviously you can play around draw like that. When you're playing additional spells that are not quick play spells in addition to the Radiant Typhoon's cards, that makes you way more vulnerable to draw. Like if you're playing Into the Voids, if you're playing Upstart Golems, if you're even playing Engages, and you get drolled, then like that sucks, because then all of those cards get turned off by droll, and it's not like you can chain them like the Radiant Typhoon cards. So then like it's still bad. Like I don't really trust blind second Tenbai still, just because people are still playing droll, and especially with the resurgence of like Mitsurugi variants and Mitsurugi Raizio in particular, which we'll get to later. Like droll is seeing more and more play than it's just been seeing increasingly more play. So like I wouldn't trust on playing the Tenpai version of the deck that hard loses the droll for that specific reason. That being said, it's not like the hand trap version of Hentai is like particularly that great or anything. You know, but yeah, that's why it's like probably way down in the tier 3 decks right now for Tenpai. It's okay, but like it is like maybe the third best deck at most at using the Radiant Typhoon cards, which is like not that's not that impressive, honestly. And it's very vulnerable still. If you're not playing the versions with like the gas and the board breakers and the Radiant Typhoon cards, then you're very vulnerable to non-engine yourself. So like yeah. Next we have Man. So Man also technically got a small buff in this pack with the Dominus Spiral trap card, a new Dominus trap card. That being said, Dominus Spiral is probably out of all the Dominus trap cards that Man and Odeon plays, it is probably the weakest of all the Dominus trap cards. Like Songs to the Dominator, Dominus Impulse, Dominus Purge, those are all better and consistently better than Dominus Spiral, because Dominus Spiral, number one, it has an activation condition. It has the same condition as Izuna, which requires your opponent to activate a monster effect in the hand or graveyard. So that already makes it like the least flexible of all the Dominus trap cards, because you have to wait for your opponent to do something specific. And then like some matchups, like that doesn't even happen. Like if you're playing against some yummy variants, like you sometimes don't even get to use Dominus Spiral until way later. And then it's like, it's not just a interruption. It's not just a straight up like you negate something like the other Dominus trap cards. Your opponent can also get a resource back, because when you bounce their monster with Dominus Spiral, they get the special something from their graveyard as well. And they're usually gonna have something in their graveyard to special summon, because they have to activate a monster effect in the graveyard or hand in the first place. So usually those cards end up in the graveyard anyway. So that they always usually get to revive a monster off the Dominus Spiral too. Like it's kind of weird. Like a lot of people that have said that have been playing Man and have been testing Dominus Spiral have not been that impressed with Dominus Spiral itself, which is like low-key, it's not really a card that you even have to run. Like you can literally just not even play Dominus Spiral, or maybe you can play one Dominus Spiral as a search target off Songs of the Dominator if you already drew your other Dominus trap cards. But yeah, it is, the Dominus Spiral is not the biggest buff you could get. That being said, Odeon is it's still a solid deck in that it's fucking yeah, it has very good hand trap lineup because it gets to play all the Dominus trap cards. Going first is one of the strongest decks because it doesn't really care too much about hand traps, yet it puts up 4 to 5 negates on its end board, because going second, again, it depends on how good the hand traps are. Like if you're against Vanguard's K9, for example, Dominus Purge, Dominus Impulse, Inform, those are all very strong cards against Vanguard's K9, especially when Vanguard's K9 doesn't draw absolutely cracked. It's very vulnerable to hand traps. Likewise, versus Radiant Typhoon. Okay, so Radiant Typhoon matchup can be either good or bad. Low-key, it feels like this is another classic matchup where it's like the Radiant Typhoon deck feels much better going second into Odeon than it does going first. Because going first, you are likely going to get stopped by all the hand traps that Odeon plays, which is like, that feels kind of bad. But if you're going second and you just draw MSTs and you just draw your shit into the Odeon end board of negates, like it's actually very easy to crack the Odeon end board of Radiant Typhoon compared to a lot of other decks, because again, you're not loading your deck up with hand traps, so you're drawing live like cards, you're drawing live gas, and then you can use your cards like Droplet, you can use your cards like MST. Number one, MST just straight up hits the Apophis traps and just stops them like completely, so that's funny. You can also like dodge the negates, you can dodge Drill Beam, you can dodge a bunch of stuff. You have like enough gas to play through their Omni negates. Like it's actually feels like like Radiant Typhoon feels like one of the reasons why Odeon might drop down a little bit, just because like it is on average it is a favorable matchup for Radiant Typhoon. Also, like I forgot to mention this, Radiant Typhoon. How reach Featherstorm, this topic with Radiant Typhoon. Okay, so Featherstorm is like kind of a meme at this point. A lot of people that have been testing Radiant Typhoon have just come to the conclusion that Featherstorm is not worth playing, because it is only a going first card really, and like going second, like yeah, people can say all they want about, oh yeah, just make Harpy's channeler, or like what is that card, Harpy Conductor, just make a Link 2 Wind monster going second and then activate Featherstorm, and then continue playing afterwards. Like that is the easiest thing in the world. Like no, like you're not a deck that plays hand traps to begin with. You're gonna be playing into a lot of strong boards. Okay, those boards are not gonna let you just willy nilly make a Link 2 monster. And beyond that, like we talk about the decks like consistency problems, like sometimes you can't even extend. Like after you make a Link 2 and you go Featherstorm, okay, like you need more plays to extend afterwards. Okay, you can't just link off bodies just to link off bodies, and then like it's not. In a best of one, it doesn't feel like it's worth running. I'm not gonna stop you from playing Featherstorm. You know, you do you, but like if you're trying to like compete or like play the best version, in my opinion, the best version of Radiant Typhoon on Master Duel does not include Featherstorm. Okay, so yeah. Moving on from Radiant Typhoon to Energy. Okay, so Vanguard K9, Vanguard K9. It's yeah. I mean we've all heard the things about Vanguard K9 by now. Like it's a very strong deck. It has very wide variance of hands, much like Radiant Typhoon. It can draw very ass a lot of times. A lot of times it can be very weak in the hand traps. It can also be very strong in the hand trap. It's really just kind of just the luck of the draw. So it does have consistency problems. When it gets going, it is like the most unstoppable deck in the game. And the Radiant Typhoon matchup is not particularly, I don't think it's particularly that bad or that great for either side. So, you know, we'll call it like a bit of a wash on that. So I will say that the non-engine and the hand trap choices that have been picking up popularity recently have been, you know, not been ideal for Vanguard K9. Now, obviously, you know, some of that is due to Vanguard K9 itself, but it's also like due to other decks. You know, for example, Droll is obviously one of the better hand traps versus Vanguard K9, but it's been picking up popularity also because of the resurgence of Mitsurugi variants, and especially Mitsurugi Raizio. So, you know, an increased usage of Droll, which also can potentially hit some of these Radiant Typhoon cards. Like, again, it's not super fantastic versus Radiant Typhoon, but it's not super bad either. So, you know, and if the Droll sees an increased play, even despite Vanguard K9 not being like the best deck or not being like the most popular deck, it's, you know, it still hurts it. And then obviously Perulia. So against Radiant Typhoon, Perulia is low-key better than Fuwalos. So if people are worried about Radiant Typhoon, they might start putting in more Perulias, like, because I mean people were already playing Perulias sometimes for Vanguard K9. So if you're worried about, if you want to just catch two matchups in one, in Radiant Typhoon and Vanguard K9, then, you know, Perulia is something that you could play, which in turn also hampers Vanguard K9 quite a bit. So like those are like two of the hand traps that are like picking up popularity, and then both of those happen to be pretty good against Vanguard K9. So I'm not gonna call Vanguard K9 the best deck, but it's definitely at least a tier 1 deck, probably within like the top like 3 to 5 ish decks, at least top 3 or 4 minimum. That is the as low as I will go on Vanguard K9. Next we have the Yummy variants. So the two best Yummy variants are Yummy, Sofa Core Yummy, and Mitsurugi Yummy. There hasn't been very besides these two, honestly, there hasn't been very many other Yummy variants seen in play. Like I'm not gonna count Snake Eyes Yummy as an actual variant. Okay, like 2 people actually played that deck seriously, and Offensive Yummy has basically gone extinct. So I haven't really ran into Offensive Yummy basically in like 2 months, and like there's like the Shiny Sarcophagus and like the Dark Magician Yummy stuff, which is like, that's kind of more of a gimmick than anything. Like those aren't in my opinion, those aren't the real Yummy variants that people are playing. Like it's gonna be these two. Like Pure Yummy has problems. Okay, so Pure Yummy has like main problem. Despite Pure Yummy being the Yummy variant that plays the most hand traps, it is still the Yummy variant that is the worst going second by far, just because the bad Yummy monsters like Lollipo and Cookie, they are just so bad into any kind of half interruption at all. Like it's terrible. Like at least Sofa, yeah, you know, Mitsurugi Yummy has, you know, Mitsurugi pushes, and Sofa Yummy has Sofa Cord Happiness, which is basically like it's basically obedience school that doesn't lock you. So, you know, those definitely help you push into boards way better than Pure Yummy. Also, like again, Sofa Cord Yummy, the main perk of being able to play Sofa Cord Yummy is that Sofa Cord Yummy, in my opinion, has possibly the best hand trap lineup in the game, the single best hand trap lineup, because it combines its ability to run like Dominus Purge, which is Dominus Purge is already a very decent hand trap. It hits a lot of things, and it's also very good against K9 because it is another hand trap that is an actual trap and not a monster, so it doesn't trigger Izuna. And then it has a Herald of the Orange Light, which is the single best hand trap in the entire game. It insulates your plays. It insulates your plays when you're going first, and it's also one of the highest impact hand traps going second. You hit all the fucking K9 shit, like the Izunas, the turn 0 stuff, like the 5 manas, the maxis, the Full losses, all of that stuff. Herald checks all of those, and it also removes the body, and it always negates. It can't even be dodged. Like if your opponent goes Slinks or Slick, they go Raisin, and they try to and like you Herald of the Orange Light, the Raisin, even if they have like the Borg in hand, the Raisin still gets negated. So like, you know, it still does quite usually enough in that case. So yeah, and it sets up one of the, you know, these two decks probably set up like two of the strongest end boards in the game. I will say is that the Sova Accord Yummy end board is a little more vulnerable to Radiant Typhoon than the Mitsurugi end board is. Although I mean it is hard to say because they're both like, Radiant Typhoon is just good at dismantling, you know, boards in general. So like the Yummy Sova Accord is a bit more vulnerable to Super Poly than say the Mitsurugi end board. Although the Mitsurugi end board relies on like a lot more on purification, which can't just be sniped by MST. But like, I mean, you're fine if that gets sniped by MST because you still have like two other Omni Negates in your end board, so like it's still generally fine. And like also Yummy is probably the best deck at playing WP because of the amount of bodies that you get that Yummy produces. You get to use you will get to use both effects of WP very often. You get to use WP's negate and banish of your opponent's monster effect, and you can use the WP to either link off your opponent's monster, or more commonly you just have a bunch of spare bodies in your end board. You have like a bunch of spare Yummy monsters just randomly chilling on your end board, just because like that's how Yummy works. You just have infinite bodies. So like when you summon infinite bodies, you can just turn two of those random bodies into an SP on your own. So then the WP not only gets the Spanish, but you also get to make an SP that also banishes your opponent's cards. And then like that's on top of like the Yummy interruptions. So it's very strong. Like the end boards are like very strong with Yummy, and the deck is, unlike Vanquish Volcana and Radiant Typhoon, Yummy is actually super consistent as well. It's even not bad into Full loss. It's really just the one-off maxi that you kind of gotta worry about, and like sometimes it is a little weaker going second. Specifically, like not the Mitsurugi, because Mitsurugi is actually pretty good at playing the boards, but you run the higher, because of the high quality hand taps that you run, like generally you are going to be in less positions of where your opponent has like a strong enough end board to stop you, because your hand traps are so much better than your opponent's. And then you next have the Dragotail variant. So Dragotail, you have I'll go over all these at once. So these are pretty much the three most played Dragotail variants at this point. Although really the only Dragotail variant that people seem to be playing at this point is just fucking branded Dragotail. Like I think 95% of the Dragotail game opponents you're gonna play against are just playing branded Dragotail. Like pure Dragotail and Magistas are just kind of non-existent. So like I kind of just gotta draw them down a tier just to show how much better like branded Dragotail is compared to the other two variants. Because like I will say, with the introduction of Radiant Typhoon, Radiant Typhoon is a bit of a harder matchup for Dragotail. Like there's one thing about Dragotail is that over the last couple months they've just introduced meta decks that are, you know, good matchups versus Dragotail. Like obviously Vanquish K9 is probably the worst matchup in the game for Dragotail, just because it interacts terribly with the Dragotail cards, interact terribly with the K9 cards, and like it's hard to. Meanwhile, your Dragotail cards, like they're not as devastating versus the Vanquish cards, and like so on and so forth. Like you're always gonna have to play into Azunas and like Lupuses and like K9 stuff. Like it's really annoying, and yeah, but have just MSTs are just really annoying to deal with, unironically. Like if your opponent opens like multiple MST and you're playing Dragotail, like that feels bad, because then it's like two of your three traps are just gone straight up. Like it's actually really annoying to deal with. That doesn't even count like Sheena being able to bounce your entire board, back row or front row, and also stuff like Super Poly. So that is a reason why branded is like another reason why branded I think is the best one, because branded at the very least is good versus Super Poly, because like Radiant Typhoon does play Super Poly, and Super Poly versus like Magistas Dragotail end board or the pure Dragotail end board is really annoying because they get to fuse off 2 of your monsters and then they get to make a Secretarion, which is annoying to deal with because you're gonna have to fuse into it. It prevents you from fusing into Arphalion and using your Arphalion. Like that's really annoying. Like you end on like Seals plus Gulamel, and then Super Poly just eats those 2 up. You don't get the Seals bounce, you don't get the Maludu summon, and like then you're unplaying under a Secretarian Dragon on their turn. Like it's a mess. But if you're playing Branded Dragotail, your general end board with Branded Dragotail is Verte, Sanctifier plus Gulamel, and because Sanctifier cannot be used as fusion material, they straight up just cannot. They actually straight up cannot Super Poly anything from your normal Branded Dragotail end board, because like they can't fuse with Sanctifier, which means that they can only fuse with Verte, which is a plant, and Gulamel, which is a spellcaster, and like there's nothing that they can make with a water spellcaster and a dark plant. It wouldn't even be good, but like straight up, like you at least resist one of the strong board breakers that Radiant Typhoon can throw at you when playing Branded Dragotail. So there's that. Also, like, there's the consistency. There's like, just straight up Branded Dragotail is the most consistent version of Dragotail. It has like highest power level. If you want to play Floodgates, if you're into that, you can do that too. But like as shown like last season in the rated deals, you don't even need to play 5 Rainbow. Like that stuff's like cute and like it's funny, but like it's not necessary. Also, like it's kind of not as good when you're playing against Radiant Typhoon. They can just MST your shit anyway, so it's like probably not worth it to play anymore. But yeah, Dragotail is still among. I still think it is despite having a weaker matchup spread compared to the other top decks. I still think it's one of the best decks. But although I think Yummy, because Yummy has a better matchup spread, I will put it above Dragotail versions for now. Next you have like Lunarlight. So Lunarlight, I think Lunarlight is still very good, although funnily enough, I don't know if I want to put it above Radiant Typhoon or not. Tentatively, we'll do this. That's because I respect that there's probably some Radiant Typhoon goo that I'm missing out on, but yeah, so Lunarlight, it's a bit weird. I think Heavy Poly kind of lost a lot of utility just because like with the introduction of Vanguard Canine, like you don't really want a Heavy Poly going second into like your Vanguard Canine opponents burning you every 1500 every turn with Borger. Like that doesn't seem great. And also like Liger Dancers, low-key, Radiant Typhoon is very good at handling Liger Dancer. Like that, this is one thing that a lot of people like you might not think of if you're just looking at it at face value, but Radiant Typhoon has a pretty decent matchup versus Lunarlight for some reason, because Radiant Typhoon has a very strong grind game, and it has a very consistent, albeit unorthodox, out the Liger Dancer, which is Great Fly, because Great Fly boosts all your wind monsters by 500, and then I know you're probably thinking, what the fuck do you mean Great Fly out Liger Dancer? But like they just like stay with me for a second. Great Fly boosts all your wind monsters by 500. And then Radiant Typhoon Mandate, the trap card, boosts all your wind monsters by 300. And then Phonix itself, the monster that's pictured here, is 3k. So 3k plus 500 plus 300 is 3800, and that outs Liger Dancer. And those of you saying, oh yeah, what if you just Raigeki and just Raigeki and destroy the Great Fly? Well, if you destroy Great Fly, fun fact: Great Fly, when it's destroyed, puts back a wind monster back to your hand. So if you destroy Great Fly, the Great Fly can put itself back into the extra deck, and then you can go again, and then you just we go again. Basically, you're playing this dumbass grind game to where you're just trying to push the Liger out of Liger activations, or until they can't Liger you anymore, to where you can stick a Great Fly, and then you can just crash Liger Dancer with your boosted attack monsters, which is like that's like very. It's a very drawn out game state, but ultimately that is a game state that is actually favored for Radiant Typhoon in the long run, because Radiant Typhoon has a much better grind game than Lunarlight. So yeah, that's something to consider. Radiant Typhoon is like low-key, it has a decent matchup versus Lunarlight. And then Heavy Poly, again, not because of Anchor Soul cards, is not too viable of a card, so this deck loses like a bit of its going second bite without the Heavy Poly, and it's also let's just say like if you get Fool Lost, you can't just like randomly like Fool Lost go into double Liger Dancer and like expect to win easily as much anymore, because that's people are expecting Luna Knight more now. Like even Branded Dragotail, sometimes they run Branded Fusion for Titanic Cloud with a Nibiru index so that they make a 4K unaffected Titanic Cloud to run over Liger Dancer too. Like their decks are generally more prepared for Liger Dancer now, so even though it's not they don't have the best matchup sometimes, there's still something that they can do. So yeah, we'll keep the Lunar Light up here for now. And then the Mitsurugi variants. So Mitsurugi variants, Habakiri went to 2, so that clearly made a difference, right? But yeah, so the most successful Mitsurugi variant by far is Mitsurugi Raizio. Like just it's straight up. Like it's unbelievable. Like the deck that plays like 4 to 5, like I guess they play more Raizio cards now because Habakiri went to 2, but a deck that plays like 6 Raizio cards and then also plays triple Impulse with the Raizio cards, which is still fine because at the end of the day, the Raizio monsters at minimum are just level 4 extenders, but they can also be, if they're not under Impulse, they are full Mitsurugi combo, and they make up for the consistency loss of going from 3 to 2 Habakiri, because like who needs to open Habakiri when you can just open Ice Raizio or X Raizio or Sword Raizio, and then that's full Mitsurugi combo anyways with a detonator on the field. So yeah, this deck low-key feels like really strong. It feels like kind of the strongest deck in the game. It also plays very well through hand traps, except for exactly Droll and Lockbird. Droll is like maybe the one thing that's really annoying for you to deal with, but it's one of the better decks in the Imperm out of all of these, believe it or not. And yeah, it has a very strong end board because it's end board, like, I mean, Futsu, IP, Purification, plus a detonator. Like, come on, like that's hard to deal with. Although Radiant Typhoon, low-key, has more game into Mitsurugi Raizio because it plays Super Poly, so you can Super Poly wave the IP and like the Futsu, and then like the Radiant Typhoon is actually pretty decent into the Mitsurugi end board because the most threatening part of the Mitsurugi end boards are the back row, and especially Purification, which you can just snipe the Purification with your MSTs, and then you can summon the Sheena, and then Sheena bounces everything back. And like no matter how many materials the detonator has, the detonator just gets pushed back in the extra deck. Even if they have Eclipse Twins, sometimes it's hard to deal with. Although not every Mitsurugi Raizio deck even plays Eclipse Twins, to be honest, but I can even set that up. But yeah, I mean, Mitsurugi Raizio, it's a deck to look out for, and it's usually like Mitsurugi. One of the biggest problems with Mitsurugi is that it has consistency problems because, you know, when you're not pairing it with another engine, like you don't have the most stars in the world, especially with Habakiri going from 3 to 2. But with the addition of the Raizio engine basically just fixes all the consistency problems in the deck. This is like a perfect deck. It's like who knew that like the Mitsurugi Raizio would be just as good as it was before, even after a crossban. But you know, here we are. And then like the other Mitsurugi variants, it's like pure Mitsurugi and like Mitsurugi FTK, which is like we kind of showed that Mitsurugi Raizio is better than Mitsurugi FTK because Mitsurugi FTK it runs more bricks, and it has the Mitsurugi problem of like you know, sometimes it has consistency issues, because the pure Mitsurugi variants definitely feel the Habakiri going from 2 way more than Mitsurugi Raizio. So that is definitely a thing. Like, I know you can just replace them with extra copies of Lamia, but I mean, Lamia versus Habakiri is like a world of difference in terms of card quality. Like, there's no getting around that. And frankly, there's a huge difference in card quality between Lamia and any Raizio monster too, especially X Raizio. Like, holy shit, X Raizio is it's still unbelievably one of the single best monsters in the entire game, because X Raizio is an extender, and it's an extender plus searcher plus it can negate a card or pop a face down card with Aggregator or Valon. Like, it's insane how crazy of a card X Raizio is, and Lamia and like other consistent cards you run that aren't Raizio cards just can't, like, they just don't compare straight up in Mitsurugi. So yeah, that's why I'm throwing down Mitsurugi variants down here, you know, a tier below it, the Mitsurugi Raizio, because it's truly Mitsurugi Raizio is truly like the best Mitsurugi variant, and it's like frankly it's not close. Next, we have other K9 versions. So we have like K9 Crystron, Clanker Crystron, which is like it's okay. It's like Vanquish K9 with a bit more consistency because you have actually bridges from K9 into Crystron and bridges from like Crystron to K9, and you have a stronger end board, which admittedly the end board matters more now because if you want to play Spellcaster, you go Spellcaster and your opponent goes your opponent plays Radiant Typhoon. Let's just say they're gonna be super upset. Like straight up, like Spellcaster was not very necessary before, but now if Radiant Typhoon is a higher part of the metagame right now, then legitimately Crystron K9 being able to just turbo out Spellcaster is actually a legitimate perk. Like it's actually a real thing. So like next we have like suppose like the next most played K9 variant, which is Archmage, which admittedly there's a bit of a gap, but like there's a huge gap between the amount of like K9 Vanquish decks versus K9 every other type of deck. I think like Vanquish K9 legitimately has way more usage than every other K9 deck combined, maybe like even twice as much it feels like. But you know, definitely K9 Archmage is something that you might see, especially if you run into Distant Colder, and the deck's very scary. Going first, it's very strong. The K9 cards cover for the Archmage cards weaknesses, which is like mainly Nibiru. Like before Archmage, just straight up like if you have Nibiru and you're playing against Archmage, like you're probably Gucci, honestly. But obviously, if you're playing against K9 Archmage and your opponent starts with K9 Noroi or starts with any K9 cards, then your Nibiru is it's not gonna do jack shit, and that's a very big thing. Because if Archmage doesn't have to worry about Nibiru, then it can do its full end board, and like you're not gonna crack its full end board plus K9 stuff. So yeah, and then also like it still kind of loses the Droll, but you know, if you hard draw Noroi, you can also beat Droll. Specifically, only Noroi, which is like, admittedly, you're still gonna lose the Droll more often than not. But the fact that you have a chance to have more plays around Droll, and you just straight up have a guarantee play through Nibiru, and the fact that you were already pretty decently okay into Fool loss before, so like at worst case, like you would just give your opponent an extra draw to do the K9 stuff, but you generally you can set up a decent amount with your Archmage engine just under Fua itself, so like that's still fine. I think that Archmage is a solid deck. It's just like, you know, you have to really like Archmage to choose to play K9 Archmage over any of these decks above it, but for competitive reasons. But yeah, it's a solid pick. And then so next we have like Dark Magician. So Dark Magician is a rogue deck because like it has one card combos now. It has combos into Dragoon. It's like pretty decent into Fool Claws, all things considered. It's very bad into Droll. Like that is a thing, and if Droll sees more usage, that's an issue. But it has low to the ceiling plays that still get you, Omni Negates. There's different ways to play this. This deck is very consistent now. Like believe it or not, but before, like the deck, when you had to rely on Dark Magic Circle to get all your consistency, and like that wasn't even a guarantee. Like that was like no. But now with Shining Star cards, with Primite cards, which are just higher quality cards than the actual old DM cards, this deck, the average card quality of Dark Magician decks has risen quite considerably. The end boards have gotten better. Your plays through hand traps that are not exactly Droll and Lockbird are better. And yeah, the only thing is that Dark Magician of Destruction is not locked into Dark Magician. So then you have decks like White Forest, which then are just stealing your Dark Magician cards. Like your fucking the whites are stealing the Dark Magician the Dark Magician cards for their own decks. And then like White Forest is very scary when you lose the coin flip because of the addition of like all these Dragoon stuff now, which like I guess I guess we'll put these up here just because we're talking about Dragoon decks. Diabellstar, because White Forest plays Diabellstar, White Forest has Dragoon Axis, and then you just roll your eyes every time you go second versus Diabellstar versus White Forest and you don't have Droll, you're like, okay, so what the fuck do I? So what am I supposed to hit? What am I supposed to Ash? Am I supposed to Valor the die Bellstar so they don't get Dragoon access, and then, or am I supposed to like let the die Bellstar resolve so that they don't get Dragoon so I can try to hit the Dragoon? Am I supposed to imperm the die Bellstar so then they can still go to Dragoon anyway because they probably use the spell and then they have an Omni negate up? Like what are you supposed to hit? There's no good answer to hand trap because there is no good target to hand trap. It's just Droll or bust. It's essentially versus White Forest. Or win the coin flip, because that's another way to beat White Forest, because White Forest is a very terrible play into boards because it has to commit multiple cards into its combos. Like, it has to discard a card for pretty much damn near all of its monster's effects. So obviously, you know, when you're discarding cards for your monster effects going second, that's not very efficient to play into boards with. But yeah, this deck is just it's super annoying. Like they go Sylvie. The die Bellstar is one of the most imposing monsters in the game right now, just because of the existence of Dark Magician of Destruction. And it's like, what am I supposed to hit with this? And then like, yeah, then we have Snake Eyes and the other Snake Eyes. Basically, two more decks that can play die Bellstar. Specifically, Snake Eyes variants. I'm not sure which of the Snake Eyes variants is like the best one. Either the Fiend's one or the one that plays the Dark Magician of Destruction stuff, or like, I guess you could technically play both, but that is a lot. That is a huge extra commitment. And yeah, that I will say is that the problem with Snake Eyes is that it's kind of has like a Fool loss problem. I will say no matter which variant of Snake Eyes you play, like whether it is the Fiendsmith or even the Dark Magician Shiny Sarcophagus stuff, like you will have to give your opponent multiple draws in order to end on like a minimal board under Fuwa. It's just it is what it is. So like that's a issue. Whereas, you know, White Forest and Dark Magician were a bit better into Fuwa because they can set up stuff with back throw and like, or Primite stuff, or like in the case of, you know, Dark Magician, you can set up Primite stuff, and in the case of White Forest, it just sets up its White Forest back row and Asamina back row for additional interruptions without committing too much to the extra deck. You know, obviously Snake Eyes, its interruption is not in its back row. The Snake Eyes interruption is in its monsters. So you know, that's the Fool problem there. It feels kind of weird because it feels like Snake Eyes should be better than it's been performing. It hasn't really done much since, you know, Oak has gone back to 3, and then Poplar has gone back to 3, which I said before, Poplar going back to 3 isn't really the biggest deal anyways, but yeah, it's also like, okay, so when I said Yummy was maybe the best deck at playing WP, Snake Eyes is also up there at playing at using WP. Like, Snake Eyes has multiple ways they can use WP. Number one, like if you're playing the Fiend's version, you have access to you have the option of making a bow. With the classic Snake Eyes play of where you go Promethean Princess, with Desiree, and then you use Desiree to negate the Promethean Princess. Then you can just link off the Promethean Princess as a link 3 into a bow. And then when you have a bow plus WP, you can use a bow to summon back WP during your opponent's turn. So like, you can use WP to link off your opponent's monster, or you can use WP to link it off itself, even just into an SP, and then you can use a bow to revive the WP, and then the WP's of Nostra negate effect is also live. So like, that's one way to get both effects out of WP. The other way is straight up, like, even if you just end on like just IP and Flamebirch by themselves, IP plus Flamebirch gets you full value out of WP, because you can IP into WP using IP plus Flamebirch. Then when you link into the WP, the Flamberge will trigger. The Flamberge can revive 2 level 1s, and then you use Link Rebo to summon itself back by tributing one of the level 1s, and then you can use the resulting WP that you made off the IP. You can use that plus, or you can use WP to link off the Link Rebo and the other level 1 you revived into an SP. So that way you still get WP to make an SP to banish, and then you still have the WP effect live because you made it off IP during your opponent's turn. Like, there's a and that is just with IP plus Flamber, just not including literally the entire rest of your end board, which could be any combination of like stuff like Dragoons or Promethean Princesses within the grave, or like Queens and stuff. So like, yeah, the Snake's end board is actually very good. Like, people are wondering, like, people have been saying that the Snake Eyes end board without Appaloosa is not strong enough. Like, that is absolutely completely false. Because of the introduction of WP, your end board is more than strong enough. Like it's straight up, your end board is like a mini yummy end board, or it's like 90% of a yummy end board, which is still that is more than enough to win the game. Like that, your end board is not the problem. It's just sometimes you struggle getting there. So, yeah, and then like Fire King Snake Eyes is like, I think this thing is underrated. Although there's not a goddamn person in the world that plays Fire King Snake Eyes right now, which is like, I guess it's kind of unfortunate. But Fire King Snake Eyes does address the Fua problem, because the Fua problem that normal Snake Eyes has, Fire King Snake Eyes is very good into Fua loss specifically, because the way the Fire King effects work, like you're not actually summoning monsters from deck, you're like popping cards from deck and then adding cards to hand and then special summon something from hand, and then like you get around Fua that way, to the point where if your opponent Fuas you on like a Snake Eyes Ash or a Diabell Star, you can end on like Peruvian Princess Arvata with Sanctuary on field plus a Garunix Engrave that will trigger off of the Arvata, and then that can summon that itself back to use Kieran to pop a card. You can quick ease into Hayang. Like you get like 4 interruptions off of like 1 card for just 2 Fool Draws. Like that's pretty decent. The issue is that Fire King is also weak to every other hand trap that's not Fua. Like for example, Droll. Fire King is way weaker into Droll than normal Snake Eyes is, and it's also way worse into Perulia, because as mentioned, Perulia is picking up popularity because of Radiant Typhoon and Vanquish Soul K9. So if they have Fua, that's great. If they have Perulia is like you're actually worse into Perulia than you are to Fua. It's like one of those decks. So I think it's okay, but like ultimately, yeah, it also has like the Fire King stuff. It takes up a lot more deck space, so like you have less room for X and you have less room for hand traps in general. You have less pushes, surprisingly, because you're not playing the Fiendsive of. You generally don't have room for Fiendsive and Fire King, so it's like it's not any 2 bodies. It's not full combo like it is with normal Snake Eyes decks. It's an okay like tier 3ish deck. It's maybe 1 or 2 Snake Eyes will sneak into the top 100 of the Duelist Cup, but I don't expect many more than that. And next we have like the Orcus variant. So like for the most part, I think Mitsurugi Orcus I'm not showing anymore, because I think majority of Orcus variants now are simply combinations of Shiny Sarcophagus and Fiendsmith. Like it's straight up. Like I think Mitsurugi Orcus has kind of gone extinct, just because that variant, the main perk of that variant was that it can play Dominus Impulse, but also it played like you have the Orcus bricks plus the Mitsurugi bricks, and like that was kind of like also that took up a bunch of main deck spots, so you didn't have room for the most non-engine or hand traps. Like that was kind of like a deck building nightmare. Whereas now, if you just want to play Dominus Impulse, you just play Shiny Sarcophagus, and like you just end on a Dragoon instead, but you play way less bricks, and then that is the key. Like I've played against quite a bit. For some reason, Orcus was one of the decks that I managed to skew into against a lot. Like it was one of my most common decks I've played against for some reason. I don't know why. And pretty much every Orcus deck I played against was either Fiendsmith or Shiny Sarcophagus slop, Dragoon slop. So like it's one or the other. And yeah, I will say is that these decks, when they go first and you don't have Fool Loss, they're unstoppable. They're like, you can't stop them. It's straight up, you can't stop them. And like they have the additional benefit of like, unlike White Forest or like Fire King Snake Eyes I've mentioned, they also don't really get hurt by Droll, because you're playing Orcus. Like normally, if you Droll a deck playing Shiny Sarcophagus, it's kind of annoying for them, because then it's like, oh yeah, then they can't get access to, either they're missing access to their main engine, or they're missing access to their Dark Magician engine, which means that they can't get through a Dragoon. But if you're playing Orcus, it's like, okay, so you Droll me, that's still fine, but I still have another body, and then with 2 bodies, I can do full Orcus combo still through the Droll, which is like that's like the aggravating thing about playing against Orcus. So yeah, whether you're playing against the Fiendsmith version or the Shiny Sarcophagus version, I think the Shiny Sarcophagus version I think is better, just simply because it can run Impulse, whereas the Fiendsmith version cannot. And like, yeah, sure, you can argue that Dragoon is slightly worse than Caesar as an endboard piece, but I mean, like at the end of the day, like if you have the full Orcus endboard plus Dragoon or Caesar, like it doesn't really matter which one. I think you're generally fine. Going second again, going second it's really bad. Orchid's not gonna lie, it's pretty mid going second, but at least you can play a good amount of hand traps usually. So yeah, it's okay there. And we have like these other two decks from the last pack. So Rocket and Live Twin Fiendsmith. So Live Twin Fiendsmith, it's it's okay. It's like maybe tier 3 is a bit high, and like maybe like after the the month after it's been released in the pack, it's like it's probably not going to see that much play. But this deck plays a ton of hand traps. So yeah, if every deck in tier 3 like it's kind of like mid going into opposing boards, at the very least, Live Twin Fiendsmith plays the most hand traps out of all of them. Admittedly, the hand trap quality that Live Twin Fiendsmith plays is not the highest because it can't run any of the cool hand traps. It can't play the Dominus hand traps because it plays both light and dark. And then yeah, so it has the it's kind of weird. Like you kind of feel like you run out of good hand traps to play. And also, like, you don't really want to play too many Perulias or Mulch Armies because you do draw you draw multiple cards during your combo. And like you want to draw in the hand trap that you can actually use. You don't want to draw it like you're gonna draw like 2 to 3 cards every turn. Like you don't want to draw into a Perulia or like too many Mulch Armies and then have those cards be useless in your hand. But like I mean you can discard them for a battle, so it's not the worst. But yeah, it's like it's like an average deck. I will say it is like the typical average competent deck, but also it loses to Fua. Like that's a problem. That is definitely a problem. So like it's probably out of all of these decks here is except maybe Orcus. Even then Orcus at least can make has a Dragoon play under Fuga, whereas I don't even know what Life really does under Fuwa. So besides Droll itself. And then we have Rockets, Dragon Link, whatever, which I put down in Rogue because it's just a terrible format for Rockets. It's like there's no reason to play Bystials, which is kind of sad. Like Bystials would be very good. If Bystials were good, then that would be a reason to play the Dragon deck. But Bystials are completely terrible right now. Like at most you could say, oh, they're okay versus Mitsurugi. Like that's at most you can say. But Mitsurugi is a terrible matchup in general for Dragon Link because like you just this deck struggles really hard playing into boards because it's very weak into removal. And yeah, it's also like a lot of it's kind of very vulnerable that the end board that a Dragon Link makes is very vulnerable to Radiant Typhoon in like multiple ways. Like Radiant Typhoon, like one Super Poly, it's really devastating, honestly, because one of the perks, if anything, like the main perk of playing Rockets and Dragon Links is that a lot of decks struggle to, in theory, they struggle to out Borderland, right? But that's really not the case for Radiant Typhoon or even Dragotail, to be honest. Dragotail is another just terrible matchup for Rockets. Vanguard's Volcani is also a pretty terrible matchup. Yummy is like also not super great. So yeah, it is unfortunately it is going to be a rogue deck. Also, it loses to goddamn everything. It loses to Bulos, it loses to Maxi, it loses to Droll, it loses to Perulia. All of those cards are seeing play now for various reasons. So yeah. Next, we have so in my opinion, if you're gonna be playing a blind second deck, I would not play Tenpai. If you were to play a blind second deck, I would play Gem Knights. Blind second Gem Knights, just because Gem Knights Gem Knights do not lose to a single hand trap. Like Tenpai frequently loses to a single Ash Blossom or like a single I guess not Purge, not so much, but like a single Dominus Impulse as well. Like a lot of these, either that or you play the blind second board breaker build and then you just lose to a Droll instead. So you just swap which hand trap you auto lose to when you're playing Tenpai. Whereas Gem Knights can at least put up a fight through hand trap. Like it actually puts up like a negate with Hollow Core. Like it actually can't play through more than one hand trap quite frequently. And the top decks, they some of them are more vulnerable to board breakers than others. You know, like Vanquishal Canine does not put up any, you know, spell trap negates on its end board, and Draco Tail. I guess we'll see if Red Reboot is worth playing. Again, I don't think Red Reboot is worth playing, to be honest. It's still like Radiant Typhoon. Okay, like if Feather Duster is a meme, then it's definitely not worth playing Red Reboot for Radiant Typhoon to hit the Feather Storm, because that's like not going to be standard at all. So next we have the other Gem Knight deck, the going first version of Gem Knight, which is Gem Knight Fiendsmith, and it feels like the same type of deck as like all of these other decks down here, which is like a you know, just a combo deck that is very decent going first, and then, you know, going second, it depends more on hand traps. But out of all of these, I think Gem Knight Fiendsmith has like the best hand trap option out of all of these, which is that it can play Herald of the Orange Light the same way that Sulfur Yummy does, because it can play a heavy fairy count, you know, especially because, like, you know, Nepurem is a fairy, and then, you know, it can play additional fairies to search during its combo. And then, like, yeah, Herald, again, just being able to have Herald so that you can stifle all the turn 0 plays, you can counter Maxi and Fool Loss, and it can also, you know, it's also the strongest hand trap. So, like, yeah, other than that, like, I guess there's not too much separating, like, specifically, like, you know, if you were to compare Orcus Fiendsmith versus Gem Knight Fiendsmith versus a Snake Eyes variant versus, like, White Forest, like, all of these kind of attempt to do the same thing, which is try to combo off going first. It's just that, like, this is kind of just ordered in, like, ranking of, like, how easy it is to stop, or, like, you know, I guess how like sufficient they are going second, which, like, I guess, like, Gem Knight Fiendsmith has a combination of being difficult to stop and has, like, better going second capabilities and, like, a consistency because of the Herald of the Orange Light specifically. But yeah, I guess there's not too much separating any of these. Like, all of these, like, they have, like, this, you know, you can see all of these as about the same type of viability, whether it's Snake Eyes, White Forest, Orcus, or, like, Gem Knight Fiendsmith. Like, it's all here. Next we have, like, branded and, like, Gem Knight tier, which is, like, these are gonna go in Rogue probably. Like, branded, we're waiting on the brand support. Like, branded as a deck is just not really. Branded doesn't really exist as like a meta deck in Master Duel right now. It's not very common. If you see branded fusion, 99% of the time it's gonna be Draco Tail. It's not gonna be actual branded. Like, actual branded has its own issues. It doesn't run a lot of hand traps, so it has to play into full boards. I don't trust it to, you know, be able to play into full boards without hand traps the same way I do with Radiant Typhoon, because, you know, Radiant Typhoon is a 40 card deck. It plays MSTs #1 to, you know, hit all the problematic backrow cards. It has higher chance to see all of its strong board breakers. You know, branded is, like, not so much the case, and then it's, like, low-key branded is also kind of a little weak into hand traps. It's yeah, I don't know. Again, we're just waiting on the new support to, you know, revitalize this deck, because it's honestly been kind of stagnating results wise, and it hasn't. I don't think this deck Brandon has really topped the Duelist Cup in like a year or so at this point now, right? Or it feels like it. Like, has it topped since last Snake Eyes Fiendsmith Duelist Cup? Because, like, that's a year ago, and, like, I don't think it has. So, like, and then it just has not produced results ever since. So yeah, so it's kind of like a fall from grace. Speaking of fall from grace, you know, tier is, like, not doing exceptionally better or anything. It's like, this is actually, like, the worst version of the Gem Knight deck. It's like, you know, the tier, if you're playing tier Gem Knight versus Fiendsmith Gem Knight, and, like, probably Gem Knight is probably the best way to play tier, you know, Gem Knight Fiendsmith tier. But, like instead of being able to run all these high quality hand traps, like, you know, Herald of the Orange Light, and then being able to run extra non-engine, instead you're playing a bunch of tier cards, and, like, you're trying to mill and get lucky, and hopefully you can maybe end the roll colors on your end board on top of that. But, like, it doesn't even feel that much better. And, like, you're just inflating, like you're just cutting non-engine for like more tier cards, which is like, you know, especially with Alperba Rhino, like it's not like tier cards are like super amazing, like aren't super amazing right now or anything. Like, I guess there's like shufflers, but you could play shufflers in normal Fiends of Gemini too, because it's a fairy after all. So like that's, yeah, I don't think that what the tier cards add to the Fiends to the Gemini deck is not worth, you know, it's not worth like having to cut all that stuff. So like, and especially the Herald the Orange Light. So yeah, and here's another deck that also is just has not had much success over the past year or so competitively in Duelist Cups, and it's also a deck that has not really seen, it's seen a significant drop off in play on the ladder as well. Speaking of significant drop off, stun. This might be the nail in the coffin for stun as we know it right now. Like technically, it got Desires to 3. You know, that could potentially help it, but at the same time, we just introduced a deck called Radiant Typhoon. And Radiant Typhoon is possibly the single worst matchup for stun, because you know what everyone has been saying about stun. Oh, just run back or removal forehead. Well, okay, now we got a deck that literally runs back or removal. It literally runs MST. Like this is, stun does not have a single good matchup anymore. Like it straight up just does not have a single good matchup. Like I don't know what you're trying to run barrier statues. Like when half your barrier statues don't do shit against these decks. It's like, look at these top 3 decks and like you imagine trying to draw the right barrier statue versus these decks. Imagine trying to not draw water or earth because of Drago Tail, not draw fire because of Vanquish Soul, not draw light because of Yummy. Like it's damn, man. Yeah, it's boy. I mean, it's good. You know, rip Bozo. Nobody's shedding a tear for the death of stun. But yeah, this could be like legitimately. This might spell the death of actual stun decks in Master Duel, which low-key that I didn't think I'd see the day that where stun would be like an unviable deck. But like this is about as close to it as it feels like. Then we have a Labyrinth, which also Labyrinth I don't feel that great about. It's like a back row deck that at least Labyrinth back row, at least it fucking is chainable, so it doesn't lose the MST. Like there's so many decks that straight up just get neutered by MST. It's actually hilarious, but I guess Labyrinth is not necessarily one of those, so because you can at least chain like your cards. You can chain the trap checks, you can chain the big welcomes, you can chain most of your traps, so that's fine. Not the floodgates, like floodgate is not too reliable. There's definitely less people playing Red Reboot now at the very least. Although there's still probably going to be at least some people trying out Red Reboot, but yeah, when Red Reboot was played, Labyrinth was completely like it might have been down the bottom of the Rogue. Like I did not trust that at all. But yeah, Labyrinth, it still has issues going second. It's still going first. It still triggers the K9 cards for some reason. So like you're still gonna have to play into K9 cards even if you're just playing straight up Labyrinth, no matter what monster you play. You know, Furniture, Lady Labyrinth, Lore of the Heavenly Prison, no matter what, they all, for some reason, all those trigger the fucking K9 cards too. Like your Drago Tail matchup is annoying as hell if you can't establish D barrier. Like you're basically just trying to establish Dimension Barrier, but then Dimension Barrier isn't even good against like all the top decks anymore, because what if you play against Radiant Typhoon? Like what are you gonna call D barrier? Like there's nothing good. You can call D barrier exceeds, I guess, so your opponent can't go into Totem Bird. Like that's a big deal, right? But yeah, that's yeah, I just don't really have faith in backrow decks that aren't exactly Odeon. And Odeon is, I've said it before, Odeon is not really a backrow deck. It has cards that it sets, but those cards can be used from hand. It's because they're hand traps, and that's what separates Odeon from every other backrow deck, because Odeon plays hand traps and good hand traps at that versus like everything else. But I guess you can play Impulse and Impermanent Labyrinth too, which is why, you know, there's still something to consider. But like the Labyrinth is like, out of all the decks that can play Impulse and Imperm, like clearly, like all you can see, every deck up here that can play Impulse is rated above Labyrinth. Like Labyrinth might be like low key maybe the worst deck in here that actually can't play Impulse. I guess Rocket, I guess I did technically put it above Rocket, and Rocket is maybe an Impulse deck, but yeah, it's yeah, and then like Voice, it's boy, this is just. It's like, why are you even playing Voiceless Voice? Like, you're playing Habakiri. It's like, why do you even have the Voiceless cards in here? Just run better cards. Like, the Voiceless cards are actively holding the Mitsurugi cards back. It's like, because you're playing Voiceless Voice, you can't play Impulse. It's like gross. And then like the Canine cards are like, Voiceless Voice cards interact terribly in the Canine cards. It's also like. Voiceless Voice gets smacked by MST because MST can hit the barrier, or MST can hit your Voiceless Voice spawn traps, and then suddenly your things aren't untargetable anymore, and then it's like a whole mess from there. It's yeah, I don't really really like Voiceless Voice, to be honest. Like, I would low key almost want to put it down here, just because this deck has Habakiri in it, you know, how bad can a deck that plays Habakiri be? Well, I mean, this is probably as like low as it can get, I guess. Voiceless Voice, Mitsurugi. You have Centurion, which is like, man, I don't. Yeah, at the very least, Centurion doesn't like die to MST. Like, very funnily enough, like it is because of the protection you get from Auxilla. Auxilla actually lets you not auto lose the MST like some other decks do, but I mean, you still kind of you kind of auto lose the Sheena in that case. But yeah, this deck is just the engines that you pair Centurion with don't feel good. Like, pairing it with Magistus or Bystials, neither of those engines feel good. Bystials are just terrible into the format. Magistus cards aren't exactly great into the format, and like they make Centurion play into cards that normally, like, the advantage of Centurion is that Centurion, like, it doesn't lose to Droll, it doesn't lose to Blowouts, it doesn't lose to Fuwa. Granted, its definition of not losing is it's not like it does anything even if it goes it's not like it does too much if it goes uninterrupted in the first place. So it's not like you're losing too much from getting hand trapped in the first place. But yeah, playing Magistus cards forces you to play more into Droll and play more into Fuwa, but without those, you lose into the normal hand traps. Like, you lose to the 1-for-1 hand traps a lot. Like, it's just, yeah. And then going second, you can't even play any of the cool hand traps. And honestly, you don't even play that many hand traps compared to like something like Live Twin. Like, I think Live Twins has more room for hand traps than Centurion, and Live Twin actually plays through every single hand trap except for Fuwa. Whereas low-key Centurion, there's like a 50-50 whether you get stopped by a single hand trap all the time. And yeah, bad matchups into Phimena, bad matchups into Secretarian Dragon. It's like, I guess you can play around Canine cards. That's like one advantage with Centurion. But although, like, it's not like your end board is so strong to the point where it would have just, you would win off your end board anyways. It's, yeah, if you want to play a deck like Centurion, in my opinion, I think Blue Eyes is like your better bet, because Blue Eyes, yeah, at the very least, Blue Eyes doesn't lose like Centurion. Blue Eyes doesn't lose like any of the blowout hand traps. It doesn't lose the Droll, doesn't lose the Fuwa. It can play around Canines, but it just has a much higher card quality. It actually, you know, you don't care about Ash or Imperm nearly as much, because if you get Imperm on your normal summon like Barrow or like Sage, which, by the way, Sage made in all of this stuff is at 3 now, so like you're at full power. Like, you could just link it off into the Link 1, and then you can still continue playing from there. You have a good grind game. It's low-key. Okay, so MST kind of sucks, not gonna lie. Like, I will admit, playing the True Light deck against Radiant Typhoon feels, it can feel like hot ass sometimes. I'm not gonna lie. Like, you kind of have to, like, that actually was something I haven't considered. But Yeah, the fact that MST is being played now to snipe your True Light, it actually that actually does kind of suck. Not gonna lie, it's yeah, I might have to reconsider this depending on how popular Radiant Typhoon is, because like that's just something I realized. But yeah, you can play around most other stuff, and like you don't care about Fua, so yeah, there's that. Then there's Malice, Malice is still probably like still maybe the second or at least minimum third best Dominus Impulse deck. It's still here. It's Malice. Mitsurugi has overtaken its place now though. Like if you want to play an Impulse deck, if you want to play a deck with Shifter too, mind you, Mitsurugi is probably the better choice over Malice at this point, because Malice, there's so many cards hit on a ban list for Malice that it loses all. It's so much more normal Sun reliant right now. You can't just like rely on like Allure or like Gold Sarks or like starting with a Cybers or a Malice monster on field without your normal summon, because that's how you would be able to play through most interruptions. But now it's, I mean, there's Radiant Typhoon Malice, which I don't feel like Radiant Typhoon Malice is real. I don't feel like Radiant Typhoon, any hybrid of Radiant Typhoon is really real, because like that's a that's a lot of that is a lot of engine requirements, a lot of space for engine, and a lot of these decks, maybe not necessarily Malice, but a lot of decks that would want to play Radiant Typhoon, they already struggle with like having such large engines to begin with, and then like having to force the Radiant Typhoon stuff in there too, and it forces you to play in the draw, because like as I mentioned, like the Radiant Typhoon cards themselves are good in the draw, but when you combine Radiant Typhoon with other engines that aren't quick play spells exactly, then you open up a vulnerability to draw, because it's not like you can chain your non-quick play spells to draw like you could with the normal Radiant Typhoon cards. But yeah, I still think you should probably just stick with normal, just straight up Ad Ignister, Malice, maybe run a few more Ad Ignister cards. You can still play Impulse. This deck is still pretty decent. Like if you don't draw, like if you just open a bunch of imperms, or like if you open draw and the Malice opponent doesn't open like multiple Ad Ignister cards, you're still in for a bad time. Like if you open Ash plus imperm, you can very easily still get comboed to death by Malice through that. But yeah, it's just that like with stuff like 5 mana, with stuff like Holly Sue, K9, and stuff like that, I think the Malice inboard is still strong enough to resist the Radiant Typhoon as well, because the Malice inboard is layered, and it's like has interruptions from the graveyard, and it also produces a bunch of follow-up. And also, the strongest part of Malice inboard is that you get to draw a bunch of cards, and then you get to draw into non-engine. And then like if you draw into draw, if you draw into like all of these stuff, all these hand traps against Radiant Typhoon, even if they break your full board, it's hard for them to kill you and actually establish much if you draw into like 2 or 3 hand traps along the way. So like Malice still has the strong end board going for it. It's one of the strongest end boards going for it. It is a little more vulnerable to Mulch armies. A little more vulnerable to draw because of the banless hits, but it's still like I still think it's a solid deck. It's just that people just don't really want to play Malice anymore, and like that's totally understandable that people don't want to play Malice. So you don't really see this deck that often anymore. So I could, if you want to, I could listen to arguments dropping Malice in tier 3. Although that's less based on how good I think Malice actually is, and that's more based on actual representation, which is gonna that's gonna change depending on like honestly, like I can't really predict where Malice is gonna be. Like the last 3 times I predicted where Malice was, I was kind of wrong about it, so I'm just gonna keep it here for now. But yeah, that's like, this is like sort of my opinion on like the the top decks and like the not top decks, and like some of the new decks for this format, for this Duelist Cup. And of course, this isn't every single deck, so if there's a deck that I didn't put on this list but you want me to talk about, or you want to discuss, we can discuss that in the comments too. But yeah, thank you for watching, and good luck in the Duelist Cup, no matter what your goal is, whether you're trying to grind stage 2 or you're just trying to get all the gems. You're just trying to get the D level max. That's fine too. So yeah, thank you for watching.